This is For Keeps, a podcast about collections and connections. I'm David Peterkowski. A big part of playing video games, perhaps the biggest part, is getting the highest score possible. And this collector's story features a lifelong gamer who's done just that, in a big way. Twice, in fact, but not on any particular video game. Her story is a tribute to her love for video games, love for her family, and the love of a supportive spouse who encouraged her to reach for the record books.
First, we're going to run. We're going to get our speed up as much as possible. We get the toe board. We're going to hit jump, hold it until 45 degrees, and then fly through the air with the greatest of ease.
This is the sound of collector Linda Guillory playing a vintage handheld gaming system called Hyper Olympic Jumping Type, which was made by the gaming company Bandai back in 1984. Video games have given Linda joy for much of her life, and clearly they still do, at least when they aren't frustrating her.
We're going to try it again. I was distracted. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
The passion that Linda has for video games, and specifically handheld gaming consoles, has led to her building up a serious collection. Her games, many of which date back to the 1970s and 80s, fill shelves up to 3 games deep in her home outside of Dallas, Texas. And now, Linda's taking up some space in the 2022 edition of the Guinness World Records book, where she'll be listed as the holder of not 1, but 2 collecting records. The largest collection of LCD gaming systems at 1,599, and the largest collection of playable gaming systems at 2,430. Linda comes from a big game-playing family, and she began seriously collecting as a way to reminisce about her favorite games from back in the day. If you're a gamer, hearing the names of some of her favorites, Coleco Pac-Man, Tandy Cosmic 200 Fire Away, and Actronic's Grand Prix Turbo should give you an idea of her appreciation for the genre's earliest days. Linda's 2 Guinness records are a testament to her long-standing obsession with handheld games, which started in childhood when she'd search in secondhand shops for games to buy, and often to fix, while growing up in Michigan, south of Detroit. Today, she's an electrical engineer who works for Texas Instruments, and it's easy to see the connection between her early life as a fan of handheld technology and the field she's found herself working in. It's also clear that she's a collector who believes in doing what the games were meant for, playing them. And she's demonstrated that in a series of gameplay videos she's posted on social media to show off her favorites, including the video for the Bandai Olympic jumping game you just heard. More on that later. For Linda, it all began at age 8, when those aforementioned trips to the secondhand stores gave Linda her start as a collector, if you even want to call it that.
You know, when I was younger, I wouldn't call it collecting, but I definitely enjoyed playing the games. As a kid, it was more just playing the games and the fact that I had to fix them, you know, when we got them from the Goodwill or thrift shop or wherever we purchased them. So I got to the point where I just took care of my stuff, and I guess it was a small collection, maybe 35 systems.
And can you recall some of the early games you acquired?
I remember Digital Derby. And then I had a tonic red basketball game and just this no-name football game. I remember the fact that it was no-name. I think now I would say it's Toytronic or something, but it was probably the no-name brand of that gray football game. And I remember because I wanted Mattel football, and everyone had Mattel football, but I had the cheap gray one. Also, on my 13th birthday, I got Coleco Pac-Man tabletop. That was huge.
While a lot of game-playing kids are discouraged by their parents from devoting too much energy to video games, Linda's father saw an opportunity. I think I read that your father helped you fix some of the games up, or he fixed them for you.
Right. So I would take them apart and look for what was wrong, and usually I could figure it out pretty quickly. Even back then, the games were pretty simple. And then if there was any soldering to do, my dad always did the soldering for me.
Uh-huh. And what kind of work was he doing? Was he kind of a repair person?
He was just like a handyman, but his day job was working for Ford Motor Company. But he would take everything apart. If we threw out a washing machine, he would literally take it apart to get the tin out of it and then to get the copper out of the motor. He would have me take the motors apart, and he would allow me to keep magnets from the motor. I always said that was my payment.
And I think I read somewhere you were one of 9 kids?
Yes, I am the youngest of 9.
So any way you could bond with your dad, you would jump on it?
Well, definitely, but I always felt that I was the favorite anyway, being the baby in the family. But no, my dad and I I was daddy's little girl. I think any one of my siblings would say that. So I was always the person hanging out with him.
Though Linda spent a good deal of time bonding with her father over video games, her passion for the games wasn't welcome everywhere. And that's when Linda, the budding young engineer, got creative. Can you tell this story of the football game you rigged so you could secretly play it in class?
Oh, yeah. So that was the gray football game. And what I did was I just took the back off because they had this little sound disc and 2 wires that go to the sound. Just take those apart, and on the side, I cut in a switch and then had my dad solder the wires back to the switch so that way I could turn on and turn off that sound disc. It worked for everyone. He was happy not to hear all that noise with me playing. And it was just the added benefit that I could play it in study hall. Funny side story, or not so funny. One of the guys, Jeff Janis, I went to school with him. He was playing my game in study hall, and he got caught and paddled for it. Back then we had paddling in school still. So yeah, I definitely needed that switch if I was going to ever play that game again.
A key point in Linda's evolution as a gamer and collector took place when her older sister made a fateful visit back to the family home, armed with a very popular gaming system.
My sister brought home Nintendo from college, and I pretty much lost my mind playing those games. I just remember her coming in the house and telling me that there was this new game out. I don't even remember knowing it existed before she brought it in. And we sat down and we started playing a game, and I think it was just Super Mario Brothers. I cannot remember that first game because she barely let me play. I think it was probably Super Mario Brothers because that's the one, whenever we played it together, she always took the lead. Other games, I would take the lead. But I definitely remember not sleeping that weekend she came home.
And then soon after that, you started collecting games of your own, I'm guessing.
I think we went to the store that weekend and bought like another one. And there was a store in Monroe, Michigan. It had this return policy where you could buy the game and return it, Hills Brothers, and return it for any reason. So we would buy it, and if we really liked it, we would keep it. If we didn't, we would return it. It was a great policy.
Linda wound up keeping a lot of video games. Unfortunately, she wound up losing many of them years later, when a house fire destroyed her mother's home, the place where she'd kept so many of her games in storage. Was it hard for you to get back into collecting games after having lost so much at that point?
I don't know if I would say it was hard. I just kind of thought more of that was a different part of my life. Like I was over that. And I really did seem like I was over that. At that point, I had the PlayStation and I had moved on to, some of the newer systems. But then when my brother visited me in 2003, and we were up late one night talking about who was better at this and that game, and he just looked at me and he said, "Whatever happened to your old Coleco Pac-Man?" So I started telling him how it burned up in the fire and how I loved that game. And, I started remembering, he was like, "I remember you used to sleep with that game." And I was like, "Oh yeah, playing it under the covers," right? So, I was like, man, I wish I had that game again, and I went on eBay and I barely slept for 2 days buying up that whole series. By the end of that week, I had bought every single Coleco Pac-Man tabletop. So, I really loved it because once I saw Pac-Man, I was like, wow, that's amazing. I bought it. And then I was like, oh my goodness, there's Galaxian. I always wanted Galaxian. And then I was like, oh my God, Frogger, so if you're going to have one, you should have them all.
After the fire, Linda's desire to collect only grew stronger, and over time, the condition of the games she acquired began to evolve. I understand you made a transition from buying used and often broken gaming systems, which you would repair, to buying unopened games. Do you remember when and why you made that switch?
I do. So initially I bought broken ones, so as you say, so I could repair them. But then it was hard to find good broken ones, quality broken ones. But then I also noticed that the box art reminded me of the game and the childhood. And so just seeing the boxes, and I was like, oh man, I really want that box. And so I started buying box games too.
And then there's the question that many collectors have to contend with at some point. What will the family think? For Linda, thankfully, her collecting was never a real issue.
My family has always been very supportive. I think if I had been asking them for money to buy the games, they may not have been as supportive. But, since it was my own money and I was doing what I wanted to do with my own money and they saw the joy I got out of it, everyone says I light up when I talk about the games. And honestly, I believe them because I can feel it. I feel the warmth when I talk about it. It just makes me happy. So they were very supportive.
That support also came from Linda's late husband, Tom. Linda found out she was approved for the Guinness Records in December 2020, and it was Tom who helped her create a video on the collection for Guinness the following month. Just 3 months after that, Tom suffered a massive heart attack and was in a coma until he passed away in May 2021. Though he was very much a non-gamer, he was always more than happy to cheer on Linda in her quest.
I was almost done collecting by the time I met my husband. So every guy I dated, I told them, this is what I do. This is what I plan on continuing to do. And he understood and he supported it. He said, you know what? If this is what led you to being who you are, then I support it.
But he never played?
He never played one game. I would try to get him to play, and he was like, no, I'm pretty proud of the fact that I've never played one video game in my life. I was like, wait, you never been to an arcade? He said, no. I couldn't believe it, but yeah, I tell everyone that's how I knew it was true love, because I never expected to marry a man who had never played a video game. I always expected to marry another collector and we would combine our collections. I was looking forward to that actually, but I was like, he never played a game, never cared to play a game, but I loved him. So we got married.
And he was very supportive, so that's better than someone having a collection that you could merge yours with.
Right. He was very clear he would never spend one of his dollars on a game, but for my dollars, he was okay with me spending it, So there was a distinction. Again, he wasn't going to spend his money on it, but he didn't mind if I spent my money on it. And sometimes as a collector, that's all you can hope for. I've heard so many horror stories from other guys who collect about, spouses who aren't supportive, and just sounds like a nightmare.
So let's talk specifics about your collection. What are some of your favorites among all those games you've acquired?
I always have to go back to the ones that I had as a kid when I think about my favorites. But honestly, any football game will tend to be my favorite. And there's this one called Epic Galaxy, Galaxy 2, where it's like a Space Invaders game. And I love playing that. I like playing the ones that are probably easy for other people to pick up, just so when I bring someone in, I can hand them that game and play it with them, and they can actually have fun playing it rather than have a hard time figuring something out. So Pac-Man, of course. I love Miss Pac-Man. Yeah, any handheld football or basketball game. I just think those are super cool.
And these don't sit behind glass and never get touched. I mean, it's the opposite, if anything.
Right. I definitely have some that are new in the box, sealed, and I don't open those. But I'll typically buy a second version of it to play just because I want to play it. So every game that has come into this house and hasn't been new in the box sealed, I've played. And some of the ones that have been new in the box sealed, I've played also. Some I just can't not play.
And how do you organize your collection?
It's organized by manufacturer right now. I actually switch it up. So right now it's basically by manufacturers from A to Z. Other times I'll have a football area, a basketball area, baseball area, and then space games. So more like a theme. I like to rotate the games every 6 months to a year, just because if someone comes over, it's nice to be able to pick a game out from the front and just open it and play it. So I built a library bookcase with the ladder, and I took it all the way up to the ceiling to give me more room.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, I always wanted a library bookcase, so it's nice. I love it.
And no books. It's terrific.
No books this time. Every time we looked for a house, it was based on, was there enough room to display my collection? It was like the collection got larger, so I needed another house. The collection got larger, so I needed another house. What's on the shelves is probably about 70% of the collection, and then the rest is in storage. I still can't display it all, and even the shelves are 2 and 3 deep with games.
My goodness.
Yeah, I need a larger collection room.
Time to move again.
Either move or expand. I'm looking for expansion places.
Part of the reason Linda has expansion on her mind is that she's got so many multiples in her collection. Case in point, how many Coleco Pac-Man tabletop games do you have?
1, 2. I think I only have 2 unless I have 1 in storage. So everything I have on display that is not actually like my real copy, it's a duplicate usually. If it's just like a game on display, then it's a duplicate. I don't take my games out of the box to put them on display. So I have 1 on display, and then I have the actual game in the box. And I think my other ones, I've had at least 3 or 4 at a time. I think my other ones I've sold, though. So I only have 2 at this time.
I don't know. You're getting low.
Yeah, but there's so many other ones to play. There's tons of Pac-Man games, but I must say that is one of my favorite versions right there. The Coleco is definitely one of my favorites.
Out of everything that she's collected, there's one game franchise dating back to the 1980s that occupies a special place in Linda's collection room and in her heart. Do you have a Legend of Zelda area? I understand that game is especially...
Oh, my goodness. Yes, I definitely have a Zelda area. My sister shamed me into it. So the one who brought home the Nintendo system, she's actually the true gamer in our family. And she came to visit and she looked around and she was like, I can't believe you don't have more Zelda games. And she's like, what's wrong with you? How are you my sister? She said, I have more Zelda games than you. And I was like, what? She was like, I don't know why you only focus on the vintage stuff. You need to get into some of the newer stuff. So as I say, she shamed me into it. So I started buying every Zelda game that I could find. That's a system. So I have the DS and, some of the limited editions and Zelda GameCube, anything Zelda related that was a system. Now I purchase also.
Uh-huh. And I think you have a Mattel area as well?
I do. I definitely have every Mattel game that I know of, handheld. So I have the football, the soccer, the hockey, Jax, Auto Race, Space Alert, Missile Attack, Mind Boggler, Gravity, Ultra Dome. You name it, I got it.
So let's talk about how you're getting all these games. I think I read that you've done a lot of international travel, either for work or pleasure, and you're often carving out time to track down games. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Yes. So for Texas Instruments, I've traveled to many countries. I don't know, probably close to 10, I would think. But the ones where I've found games would be Taiwan, Hong Kong, the Philippines, and most of my games I found in Japan. So whenever I would visit Japan or any of those countries, you fly through Tokyo, Narita Airport, I would just stop in Japan and take maybe another 3 to 4 days off and go shopping. I've gone all over the country there, and it's been amazing because my coworkers would actually help me by telling me of different places I could go. They would say, Linda, I was in this town last week on vacation and I saw this shop and it had a lot of vintage games. And so they would give me directions and off I would go.
A video game tourist.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, they already have so many shops there in Akihabara. And then they have Mandrake and Super Potato and Traders 1 and Traders 2. And then all of the other shops that you don't know the names of. Just amazing. I wish it was like that here, where you could just go anywhere and just find these things.
When you haven't gotten games overseas, how have you gone about collecting?
So I started off by going to thrift shops, Salvation Army, Goodwill's here, but that dried up pretty quickly. I think other people were using those avenues. So now I use mostly online. So of course eBay is a big source. Then there's Yahoo Japan, and then there's other sites in other countries that I use. I definitely have to learn a few foreign terms to be able to use them, but I think that's almost natural. If you want to get the games from multiple countries, you have to learn a few foreign words, definitely.
So your Japanese is getting stronger?
I recognize it more, so I can definitely navigate Yahoo Japan and Japanese characters.
Impressive. And so a bigger picture question about collecting. How would you describe the collecting community you've encountered? Have you connected with other gaming system collectors?
I have. So I joined Handheld Museum, the forum, back in like 2005. So I connected with a lot of the collectors there. And then I also wrote a book on vintage electronic game price guide in 2008. Based on that, a lot of people contacted me, and I still keep in contact with those people via email and then the forums. So I have I would say a good little community of people I keep in contact with, I trade with, and just email.
And it's a good-natured bunch?
Right, it is. I think they're awesome. But, it's funny because, when the Guinness article came out, I saw some of the negative comments. I know you're not to read the comments. So I was shocked because I really haven't had any exposure to much negativity at all. Now, granted, I know that I'm one of the few females. Just when I signed up, I saw that. But, everyone's been really nice to me.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that question. Are you fairly unique in the space as a female collector? It sounds like you are.
I think I am, just based on what I've seen on the different forums that I've joined. I haven't seen too many females, but I know that's changing, and I was used to it when I joined 15 years ago. But now I definitely think that's changing just when I see, people hashtagging female gamer and things like that. It always makes me smile.
Well, they didn't grow up in your house where your sister claims to be the real gamer in the family.
Right. Oh, my goodness. She definitely is, though. I can't beat her. She has way more newer systems than I do. So I'll let her do her thing, and I'm going to continue to do my vintage thing.
And though doing the vintage thing has led to Linda acquiring a record number of gaming systems, there's at least one white whale in the game world that's eluded her, and just about everybody else.
Tiger's Tabletop Star Castle. I have been hunting for that game for just about as long as I've known it's been in existence. It's kind of rumored not to have been gone to production, but I know it did. And I talked to a guy who said he had it, but he sold it to another collector who doesn't want to be named. So I 100% believe it exists, but I've never seen it. And I've never even seen a real picture of it. But I'm still looking. Tiger Tabletop Star Castle. If you find it, contact me, please.
It's almost like a literal white whale. No one's seeing it.
Really? I was like, if you own the game, how could you not have taken a picture of it at any point in time? It seems a little fishy, but I do believe it exists.
We'll keep looking.
I will.
So let's talk about Guinness. At what point did you start to think about submitting your collections to the people who compiled the Guinness World Records?
I think it was other people kept mentioning it to me. They were like, well, do you have a record? Is this a record? Do other people have more? And I was like, that's a very good question. I said, I definitely think I'm the top female. And then that only went so far. People would say, why female? Why not the top in the world? And I was like, oh, goodness. So in 2016, I actually applied, requested the ability to do the record attempt. It took me about 3 years to get all the documents together the way that they wanted me to have it, to get the record. So it's been a while.
It's very tedious, isn't it?
I hate to call it tedious because looking back, I realized if I would have done it the way that they suggested in the beginning, it would have been so much easier. But I needed clarification. Let's just say that. I should have got a lot of clarification before I started. But it all worked out. So here I am, Guinness World Record holder, Linda Guillory.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I was so excited. Oh my gosh. I was so excited when it happened.
Exactly how excited? When Linda got word about her new records, she went straight to her husband, Tom, sharing the news in a unique way.
I received an email from them, and I had been waiting on that email, and as soon as it popped up, I read it, I didn't scream because I didn't want my husband to know what was happening, but I did some fist pumps, I did a little dance, and then I ran downstairs to tell him, and I said something like, "What's my name?" He looked at me like I was crazy. He was like, "Linda Guillory." I said, "No, it is Linda Guillory, Guinness World Record holder." And then we got up and danced and screamed. It was fun.
Tom even found himself getting competitive about the records on Linda's behalf, something she never expected.
I didn't even take all of the games I had at the time for the record attempt. I was just like, this stuff is heavy. I'm tired of cataloging. So he was like, "What about that stuff?" I said, "Yeah, I'm not doing it. I'm going to leave that." And he was like, "Yeah, leave it. So if anyone comes and break your record, then we can come back and re-break the record and say, bam, there." I was like, that was not my plan, but okay. I was like, I thought that was so funny that he was so competitive about it. I was like, yeah, that really wasn't my plan. If they want to break the record, I'm happy for them.
I like that he was thinking ahead like that.
I know. But he said, bam. I was like, okay. Yeah.
And though Linda enjoys vintage gaming consoles, she's very up to date with the modern-day tech trend of posting video content, most notably on Instagram, that spotlights her collection.
My nieces and nephews, they were like, "You need to post on YouTube and Instagram." And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah." And so I was like, okay, I'll try it. And so I did, and I really enjoyed it, much more than I expected. So I really have fun creating the videos, and to me it's kind of like a nice little distraction, you know. It's fun and it's a distraction, so I plan on continuing.
Uh-oh. I think a bad guy's coming in. I'm gonna hide behind the table over here. And I think we're getting ready to have a gunfight. This is always a strange part to me. I really need to read the instructions. Ooh, not so good.
Your competitive nature really comes out.
Yeah, I try to edit a lot of that out, but people, they're like, "That's what we like." I was like, you don't want to see too much of that. But it is true. I mean, if I'm playing it, I definitely want to win. And some of these I haven't played in a while. So I'm like, man, I suck at this. This is horrible. But I still post it.
Uh-huh. So, one last question for you. I know a lot of your games are LCD games. What is it about those games in particular that appeals to you? Is it a nostalgia thing? Is it a simplicity thing? A combination of the two?
I think it's a combination of the two. So, these are the games I grew up with. And if I didn't have it when I grew up, they are definitely the games I wanted. You know, they're the ones I was drooling over, wishing, you know, the ones that came in the Sears catalog when, you know, just thinking about flipping through the Sears catalog. And in fact, that's one of the things I do. I still buy those old catalogs just to remind me of what games are out there. So in case I missed it then, I can look for it now. So I have a whole collection of catalogs and flyers from the different games.
Wow. Well, we'll have to do a part 2 sometime.
Definitely. In fact, I'm going to start, hopefully in the next week or so, I'm going to start showing some of these flyers that match the games, because I just think that's a pretty awesome part of the memorabilia about the games also.
Well, Linda, that's everything I've got for you. I want to thank you for talking to us about this incredible collection and your newly minted world records. I really appreciate it. And congratulations again.
Thank you so much. And thank you for interviewing me.
You bet. Take care.
Okay, you too. Nice talking to you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Well, Linda Guillory is rightfully proud of those 2 Guinness World Records, and she's already pre-ordered 20 copies of the 2022 Guinness Book to give to friends and family who helped her get those records by taking inventory of all her games. And even though she's still looking for a copy of that mysterious Star Castle game from Tiger Electronics, don't count her out. Linda is a true competitor. So on that front, it's anything but game over. For Keeps is a production of me, David Peterkowski. My thanks to Linda Guillory for sharing the story of her 2 Guinness World Records and the decades-long obsession with collecting handheld gaming systems that's behind them. At forkeepspodcast.com, you'll find photos of Linda and some of the games in her record-setting collection. And in the show notes, there's a link to Linda's Instagram feed, as well as a YouTube channel that she's recently set up so you can see Linda in action as she gets down to the very serious business of playing games. The show's theme song is by Still Flyin, and the closing theme is by Eric Frisch. Additional music for this episode was provided by Silent Partner, Anne Annie, and Chris Zabriskie. Thanks for listening to For Keeps. Until next time, keep on keeping on.